Hello, steadfast Taurus. People often admire everything you've managed to build, yet very few stop to wonder what it has taken to keep it standing. You may think the greatest challenge of your life was one unforgettable event, but perhaps your real test has been far quieter than that. Maybe it has lived inside the countless ordinary days when you chose to stay dependable, even while no one realized how much effort that choice required. Others have always described you as calm, reliable, and unshakable. They saw the steady presence you offered and assumed it came naturally, as though being strong never asked anything of you in return. But what if your calm was never the absence of struggle? What if it simply reflected how early you learned to carry responsibilities that others quietly set down without ever noticing their weight? Think about an old oak tree that has stood through decades of changing seasons. From a distance, people notice its broad branches and comforting shade, yet almost no one thinks about the roots stretching deep beneath the ground, holding firm through every storm, drought, and winter frost. Its strength isn't created in a single moment of resistance. It's built through thousands of silent acts of endurance that no one ever witnesses. In many ways, you become something like that tree. Somewhere along the way, you learn to create stability before anyone asked for it. Whether it was your family, your friendships, your work, or the people who leaned on you without even realizing it, you became the one others trusted to keep things from falling apart. You didn't always solve problems with words. More often, you solved them simply by remaining steady enough for everyone else to find their footing. That kind of strength is easy to misunderstand. People call it patience, loyalty, or reliability, but they rarely ask what it costs to be that person every single day. Remaining flexible without abandoning your values takes tremendous energy. Holding space for others while protecting what matters requires constant attention, and much of that work happens where no one can see it. Every strong foundation gives small warnings long before visible damage appears. A stone wall doesn't suddenly crumble without first showing tiny shifts. An old tree doesn't lose its strength overnight. The first signs are subtle, hidden beneath the bark or deep within its roots. You've probably recognized those quiet signals within yourself more than once. The unexplained exhaustion, the desire to step away from every responsibility for just a little while, the feeling that rest somehow became harder to reach than work. Perhaps you called it stress. Perhaps you blamed a busy season or convinced yourself you simply needed to push a little harder. But maybe those moments were never signs of weakness at all. Maybe they were gentle reminders that even the strongest foundations need care if they are expected to support others for years to come. And still, you kept going, not because you were forced to, but because somewhere inside you, a deep instinct has always wanted the people you love to feel safe. You became the steady ground beneath their feet, so naturally that even you may have forgotten it was a choice. That quiet resilience is remarkable, but it also has limits, and no one ever taught you where those limits deserve to be honored. Think about how often you've been the reason a difficult season didn't become a complete collapse. How many times did your consistency keep a family together, a workplace moving forward, or a friend believing that tomorrow would be manageable? Those moments rarely receive applause because stability is almost invisible when it works. People remember the crisis. They rarely remember the person who prevented it. There is a quiet kind of endurance hidden inside that role, and it deserves to be acknowledged. Carrying so much over time leaves traces that are easy to overlook, especially when you've spent years convincing yourself that being dependable simply means carrying a little more. Yet the question worth asking is not whether you are strong enough to continue. It is whether you've given yourself the same care you so freely offered to everyone who has relied on your strength. As you listen, you may begin recognizing something that has been with you for a long time, but never had the right words attached to it. That growing awareness isn't something to fear. It may simply be the first sign that a quieter part of you is asking for room to breathe, not so you stop being the steady presence you've always been, but so the ground you spent years strengthening for others can finally receive a little care of its own. If these thoughts are stirring something inside you, don't brush them aside too quickly. Sometimes the moments that quietly ask for our attention are the ones that change us the most. Before you continue, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. When was the last time you carried an entire situation with quiet strength while no one realized how much it asked of you? The truth is, lasting strength rarely disappears without leaving subtle traces behind. Long before a stone foundation begins to shift, there are tiny signs that only someone willing to look closely would notice. In much the same way, your own inner world has probably been speaking to you for far longer than you've realized. The signals are rarely dramatic, but they are honest. For Taurus, those moments often arrive disguised as ordinary parts of life. You suddenly want to cancel plans you were once looking forward to. Small inconveniences begin to irritate you more than they normally would. Even after a full night's sleep, your body still feels as though it has been carrying something heavy that rest alone cannot remove. Over time, you've become so accustomed to responsibility that you've learned to treat these moments as personal shortcomings. You tell yourself you're simply tired, too busy, or not disciplined enough. But what if those feelings are less like failures and more like a home quietly asking for repairs before the cracks become visible? Imagine a house built on a strong stone foundation. Year after year, it shelters everyone inside, standing through changing seasons without complaint. Because it remains standing, people assume everything underneath is just as solid as it has always been. Yet even the strongest foundations need to be inspected from time to time. Strength doesn't eliminate maintenance. It makes maintenance even more important. You understand this better than you may realize. There have been many days when everything around you appeared perfectly normal, while inside you could feel the weight growing heavier with every responsibility you accepted. No one else noticed a difference because you become remarkably skilled at carrying burdens without allowing them to interrupt the lives of the people who depend on you. That doesn't make you fragile. It speaks to a resilience you cultivated over many years. Still, there is a meaningful difference between rising to meet pressure during difficult seasons and quietly living beneath that pressure every single day until it begins to feel normal. Perhaps that has been one of your greatest lessons all along. Not learning how much you can endure, but learning to recognize the moment when endurance quietly becomes exhaustion. Those moments rarely announce themselves clearly. They often arrive wearing familiar faces, a lack of motivation, unusual frustration, unexpected silence, or the feeling that even simple conversations require more energy than you have left to give. If you look closely, you may notice a pattern. Those feelings often appear after you've spent days, weeks, or even months holding everything together for everyone else. You've protected stability at work, supported your family, kept promises, solved practical problems, and remained dependable long after your own reserves began to fade. Because you've done it so naturally, it can be difficult to see that the effort has been accumulating all along. Anyone who cares for an old orchard knows that healthy trees aren't left to survive on strength alone. Their roots, soil, and branches are checked regularly because waiting until visible damage appears is already waiting too long. Quiet care isn't a luxury, it's part of what allows something to endure for decades. Yet you spend much of your life directing that kind of attention outward. You notice when someone else is overwhelmed before they say a word. You sense when people need reassurance, stability, or practical help almost instinctively. Somewhere along the way, though, you may have forgotten to offer that same careful observation to yourself. Recognizing your own limits before they force themselves upon you is not a sign that you're becoming weaker. It may be one of the strongest choices you can make. The people who carry the most for others are often the last to believe they deserve rest. But lasting strength has never come from ignoring the needs of the foundation. It comes from honoring them before they quietly ask any louder. This is where a deeper understanding begins to matter. It isn't about becoming someone who can carry even more than you already do. It's about recognizing the quiet moment when responsibility stops feeling purposeful and quietly begins draining the very strength you spent years building. There is a subtle line between devotion and depletion, and it is rarely obvious while you're living through it. For people who naturally become a source of security for everyone around them, that realization often comes far later than it should, simply because they've grown so accustomed to putting themselves last. After enough years, carrying more doesn't even feel like a choice anymore. It simply feels like who you've become. There is something few people ever notice about the kindness you offer so freely. It isn't always simple generosity, and it certainly isn't weakness. Sometimes it becomes a protective layer that hides just how much effort is happening beneath the surface. Like the weathered stone beneath a beautiful home, the strongest part of what you built remains almost completely unseen, silently supporting everything above it while receiving very little attention itself. Visitors admire the warmth of the house, the comfort it provides, and the feeling of safety it offers. Yet almost no one thinks about the foundation that quietly carries its entire weight. In many ways, your own strength has been just as invisible. Perhaps that's why you rarely seem to fall apart in ways other people recognize. Instead of allowing one area of your life to completely collapse, you instinctively shift your energy from one place to another. If work demands more, you quietly sacrifice rest. If family needs you, your own plans are postponed without hesitation. If someone you love is struggling, your own emotions patiently wait their turn. You have become remarkably skilled at redistributing your time, your attention, and your emotional energy so that everything appears stable from the outside, even when the balance inside you has become increasingly fragile. At first, that ability can seem like an incredible gift. It allows life to keep moving even during difficult seasons. It helps people feel protected in moments when they might otherwise lose their footing. But every time one part of your life carries a little more than it was designed to hold, another part quietly grows tired. The cost isn't immediate enough to attract attention, yet it accumulates little by little until the wear becomes part of your everyday experience. What once felt temporary slowly becomes normal, and because the change happens so gradually, it can be difficult to recognize just how much you've been carrying. The difficult question is not whether you can continue carrying these responsibilities. You've already proven that many times over. The real question is how long any foundation can continue supporting additional weight before the ground beneath it begins asking for care instead of more pressure. Even the strongest structures are not expected to endure forever without maintenance. Their strength is preserved precisely because someone knows when to reinforce them before damage becomes visible. Most forms of exhaustion don't arrive as dramatic moments that everyone remembers. They unfold so gradually that almost no one notices them while they're happening. A friendship slowly loses warmth because you've had nothing left to give after taking care of everyone else. A dream that once inspired you becomes another unfinished plan because all your energy has been invested in maintaining everything around it. Joy becomes something you keep postponing until life feels less demanding, even though that day never quite seems to arrive. From the outside, life still appears steady. Only you know how much effort it takes to preserve that appearance. This is something Taurus often experiences in silence. Your instinct is rarely to abandon what matters. Instead, you work harder, become more dependable, and keep strengthening the parts of life that others rely on. There is something deeply honorable about that instinct because it grows from loyalty rather than obligation alone. Yet the challenge is that quiet endurance can become so familiar that you stop noticing the difference between healthy commitment and constant self-sacrifice. When endurance becomes your default response, even your own exhaustion can begin to feel ordinary. There is an important distinction here. Being capable of carrying responsibility is a remarkable strength. Believing you must carry every responsibility alone is something entirely different. One reflects resilience, the other slowly becomes an expectation that settles into your life, so gradually you no longer question it. Without realizing it, you begin measuring your value by how much you can hold together, rather than by who you are beneath all those responsibilities. No one may have asked you to accept that role directly. Instead, it was reinforced through years of hearing the same reassuring words. You'll figure it out. You're always the reliable one. Everything feels safer when you're here. Those comments sound like appreciation, and often they are. Yet repeated often enough, they can quietly become an identity that feels impossible to step away from. Eventually, you stop asking whether you have the energy because you've become accustomed to believing that dependable people always find a way, even when they are quietly running on empty. Real healing begins when you stop treating every sign of exhaustion as another problem to solve, and begin asking what created the strain in the first place. There is an important difference between repairing the cracks that appear and strengthening the ground beneath them. One keeps you functioning. The other helps you live with greater freedom. Instead of constantly responding to symptoms, you begin paying attention to the patterns that produce them, and that shift alone changes the way you care for yourself. People who spend years supporting everyone else rarely pause long enough to ask what they themselves need. That question can feel unfamiliar at first, almost uncomfortable. You may even struggle to answer it, because you spent so much time listening for everyone else's needs before your own. Yet it may be one of the most important questions your life has been patiently waiting for you to consider. Sometimes the first step toward renewal is not finding all the answers, but simply giving yourself permission to ask the question honestly. There is another quiet temptation that often appears after years of carrying so much. Eventually, you may decide the safest answer is simply to harden yourself, to stop feeling so deeply, to stop letting people in, to become emotionally immovable, believing that strength comes from becoming impossible to shake. It can seem like the only way to protect what little energy you have left, especially after disappointment or seasons that demanded more than you believed you could give. It seems sensible for a while, but nature tells a different story. The oldest oak survives powerful winds, not because it refuses to move, but because its branches yield just enough to protect the strength of its roots. Rich soil remains fertile because it continues to breathe with the changing seasons. Rivers stay clear because they keep flowing rather than trapping everything within their banks. The strongest living things endure not through rigidity, but through their willingness to remain alive, responsive, and connected. Their resilience comes from knowing how to adapt without losing their essential nature. You have probably experimented with becoming that harder version of yourself. Perhaps you withdrew from people, buried your emotions beneath responsibility, or convinced yourself that needing less would somehow make you stronger. Perhaps you tried to become someone who expected nothing from anyone, believing disappointment could no longer reach you. Yet if you look back honestly, you may find that those were the seasons when you felt the furthest from yourself, because your greatest strength has never been found in becoming harder. It has always been found in remaining deeply rooted, while still allowing your heart the freedom to grow. Like every healthy tree, your resilience has never depended on resisting every storm. It has depended on trusting that your roots are strong enough to remain grounded while your branches continue reaching toward the light. Perhaps you've already discovered something difficult to explain. Every time you tried to become colder, tougher, or emotionally unreachable, it never truly made you stronger. If anything, it left you feeling more disconnected from yourself, as though you were protecting your heart by building walls that also kept your own spirit from breathing freely. The version of you that refused to bend often carried deeper wounds than the one willing to feel, because your strength was never meant to come from shutting life out. It has always come from remaining deeply rooted while allowing each season to pass through you, trusting that change does not always arrive to destroy what is stable. Sometimes it arrives to reveal just how deeply your roots have already grown. That isn't luck, and it certainly isn't an accident. It is the result of countless ordinary days when you quietly chose to keep going, even though no one saw the effort behind that decision. There was never an audience for those moments. No applause, no recognition, just another sunrise, another responsibility, another choice to remain present when it would have been easier to let everything go. Most of those decisions probably felt too small to remember at the time, yet together they shaped the person you've become. Quiet resilience is rarely forged during extraordinary moments. More often it is built through ordinary mornings when you simply decide to show up once again. There is a surprisingly simple truth hidden within that pattern. The more you believe strength required you to become unyielding, the more pressure built beneath the surface. The weight didn't disappear simply because you stopped speaking about it. It settled deeper, becoming something your body carried long before your mind acknowledged it. Yet whenever you allowed yourself to adapt instead of resist every change, something inside you remained whole. Nature has always understood this lesson. The strongest roots don't fight the rain or the wind. They grow deeper because of them. Storms do not teach them to become harder. They teach them where to anchor themselves more deeply. This is one of the places where symbolism and psychology quietly meet. What others sometimes mistake for stubbornness or reluctance to change may actually reflect something far more thoughtful within you. Taurus often senses that lasting stability isn't created by resisting every shift. It comes from knowing which values should remain firm and which expectations can gently evolve as life changes around them. There is wisdom in recognizing that protecting what truly matters does not require resisting every new experience. Sometimes preserving your inner peace means adjusting your path while remaining faithful to your deepest principles. Think about how often you've been encouraged to harden yourself. Perhaps someone told you to care less, trust less, or stop giving so much of yourself. Maybe you even tried. Maybe for a while you convinced yourself that distance was safer than connection, that silence was stronger than vulnerability. Yet if you had completely closed your heart, how many meaningful parts of your life would have quietly withered? A friendship sustained by your patience, a family strengthened by your steady presence, a dream that needed persistence more than speed. Some of the most valuable things you've protected survived precisely because you refused to become emotionally rigid. They survived because you continued believing that consistency has a quiet power few people fully appreciate. Many people mistake gentleness for vulnerability, but lasting strength rarely looks dramatic. A healthy tree doesn't prove its resilience by refusing to move with the wind. It proves it by remaining alive through every season, adapting without losing the integrity of its roots. In much the same way, your willingness to stay open while remaining grounded has preserved far more than anyone around you has likely realized. The calm others experience around you is not effortless. It is something you've cultivated through patience, reflection, and an enduring commitment to remain steady even when your own inner weather was uncertain. Perhaps your greatest challenge now is not learning how to support everyone else more effectively. Perhaps it is discovering who you are when your worth is no longer measured by everything you manage to hold together. That can feel unfamiliar for someone who's spent years being the dependable one. When your identity has been shaped by reliability, choosing yourself can almost feel like abandoning your purpose. Yet true security is never built upon self-neglect. For someone who naturally becomes a source of stability, this realization may become one of the most liberating journeys you ever begin, because it allows your strength to become sustainable instead of endlessly sacrificial. There is a quiet beauty in an old oak that has stood through decades of changing weather. People admire its shade, its strength, and its presence, but few stop to appreciate the years of unseen growth beneath the earth that made all of it possible. Every new ring inside its trunk tells the story of another season endured, another storm survived, another year spent growing stronger where no one could see. Even in years when little seemed to change above the surface, life was still expanding below, preparing the tree for seasons it had not yet encountered. In many ways, your life has followed that same rhythm. You did not become dependable because someone demanded it of you, nor because one defining moment transformed you overnight. You became this person through thousands of ordinary choices, to remain patient, to keep building, to keep believing that stability matters even when no one notices who created it. Piece by piece, those choices formed a quiet foundation beneath everything you value. They shaped not only what you accomplished, but also the kind of presence people instinctively seek when life becomes uncertain. The greatest test you have faced was never one dramatic challenge standing alone. It has always been woven through everyday life, hidden inside small decisions that rarely seemed important at the time. Every moment you chose responsibility over giving up, compassion over resentment, or steady effort over easy escape became another quiet expression of your strength. Looking back now, those moments form a story far more meaningful than any single victory ever could. They remind you that resilience is not measured by one extraordinary act, but by the countless ordinary choices that slowly become the architecture of your character. Perhaps it is time to recognize that story for yourself, not as proof that you must continue carrying everything forever, but as evidence of the remarkable resilience you've already cultivated. The strength you possess does not need to be louder to become more real. It has been growing quietly within you all along, asking only to be acknowledged with the same kindness you so naturally extend to everyone else. Recognition is not arrogance. Sometimes it is simply gratitude for the distance you've already traveled. There is also an important difference between a statue and a living tree. A statue may appear flawless because it never changes, but it gives nothing beyond its appearance. A tree, on the other hand, offers shade, shelter, fruit, and a place where life continues to gather. It bends with the seasons, loses its leaves, grows them back again, and through every change continues serving the world around it. Its beauty comes not from remaining untouched, but from remaining alive. Every season leaves a mark, yet every season also adds something new. You have lived much like that tree. People have found comfort beneath the stability you created, often without realizing how much patience, energy, and quiet courage made that stability possible. Some have leaned on your strength without ever seeing the years required to cultivate it. The invitation before you is not to stop being generous or dependable. It is simply to remember that even the richest soil must be nourished, even the deepest roots need water, and even the strongest living things thrive because they are cared for as faithfully as they care for everything growing around them. What sustains others deserves to be sustained as well. You have already passed the hardest test, not by becoming harder, but by remaining true to who you are through years that asked much more of you than anyone else could see. Again and again, you chose steadiness over bitterness, patience over fear, and quiet perseverance over surrender. Those choices became the invisible foundation beneath the life you've built. The path ahead asks for a different kind of courage. It asks you to give your own inner foundation the same patience, protection, and steady devotion that you've so generously spent offering to the people and places you always worked so hard to keep standing. In doing so, you are not stepping away from your strength. You are ensuring that it continues to grow, season after season, with the same quiet endurance that has always defined who you are.